and welcome to the JackCast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm Matt Barocco and I'm joined as usual by Stephen Carroll, Gita Llewellyn. Hello both.
Evening.
Well, how are we? We have to get straight into the football side of things, unfortunately, with these bloody football podcasts. That's annoying, isn't it? Especially after we get dumped out of the cup in the first round by lower league opposition. Steve, it was a shambles, wasn't it? It was really, really bad watch, and £10 for the privilege too, sir.
Yeah, it was terrible. I'd go as far as to say no positives from that whatsoever. Really bad. Yeah, I think we're probably all entitled to refunds for a tenner for that. Yeah, it's just all you can say is before the game, loads of people were gutted that we couldn't go. That's the one positive I can give you, is that we weren't there to see it. Didn't waste the day because it was bad to say the least, wasn't it? I mean, I can't remember the last time we played that badly. There were honestly no positives from it. And the first half especially was really bad. The second was slightly better, but I mean that they don't deserve any credit for the improvement after the break. It was a really poor performance, and Newport haven't played for 6 months competitively, and they embarrassed us. They're 2 divisions below us, and not good enough. Simple as that. There's got to be a reaction going forward, because if we're going to see that every week, we should be concerned. I'm sure that won't happen, but it was awful. There's no other way of describing it.
Yeah, as Steve said, Gito, there's not really anything you take from it. Sometimes you go, this player showed that he's got a chance to break into the first team. No, we saw a fairly strong team out there. Certainly the front end of the pitch was strong enough to cause them problems, and that was probably my biggest disappointment, is that we failed to cause them any problems in 94 plus minutes of football. It was a shambles, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean the lack of threat was a concern, because I mean you can say that the defence was maybe missing a couple of players, but up front, no, that was about as strong as we're going to look in all likelihood. You had Ayew and Lowe up front. You had what many of us assumed would be our main midfield with Smith, Gibbs-White and Grimes there, and Routledge was in the team as well, and it just it just did not click on any level, and Newport were better than us in every single area of the pitch, which is very worrying when you're playing a competitive match a week before the league season starts. It shouldn't really have been the case that Newport were able to win so comfortably as well. I mean, they did not have to stress at all. Let's face it. That was a very straightforward victory for them. They took the lead very early on through what was a ridiculous goal, if I'm being honest. I mean, the entire defence was sleeping, and then the ball came in, and Woodman was just ball watching. He just seemed happy for it to just loft across his 6-yard area, and he did absolutely nothing about it. It was that set the tone for the entire afternoon, really, because we didn't wake up. Our play from back to front was sloppy. It was pedestrian. It was complacent. I very rarely use this word, but it was lazy. Those players were not putting in the effort that they should have. The professional pride, which should have been on show after falling behind to Newport, what wasn't really there to be seen. And like Steve said, the second half did improve, but the first half was diabolical. It was as bad a 45 minutes that I have seen from a Swansea team in the last few years. It was wretched. I mean, there isn't a single player on that pitch who had a good first 45 minutes. Awful. Absolutely awful. The defence was sloppy. Woodman had his worst 45 minutes in a Swans shirt by a million miles. The midfield really struggled to impose itself against a midfield in Newport counties, which is, it's tough. It's hard working, it's energetic, but it's not the best footballing midfield you've ever seen. And up front, we created absolutely nothing in that first half. I mean, can I just make the point as well? I like Wyndham Evans as a commentator. I like his enthusiasm and his non-stop positivity and his bias, his comedy gold at times. But even I'm amazed at his optimism and being able to say that we were the better team in that first half, because there is no way on God's green earth that Swansea were the better team in that first half. There is no way that even the most one-eyed of fans, and Wyndham Evans is the most one-eyed of fans, I don't know how he managed to come up with that kind of assessment, because we were just beaten all hands down, and it was embarrassing to say the least.
Well, to our regular listeners, who've listened to us for a good few years now, since this has been going, long before I got involved. But we usually do the football, the Twitter question, and a look ahead to the book. This year, we're going to bring in a few more features. We're going to try and spice it up a bit, try and get a bit more fan interaction in there, and also interact on Twitter as well, with snippets of the show. So keep an eye out for that, and polls and stuff, and etc. etc. One of the things which I'm going to chuck in, but not this week, but as of next week. By the way, Steve and Git know very little about my plans. I've told them bits and pieces, but the rest is going to be sprung on them, as you'll hear later on. Hopefully it goes down well with them too. But one of the ones I was going to bring in for next week was called Unpopular Opinion, which is, as it says, really on the tin. And it's funny you should say that, Gitto, as unpopular opinion. You may have used that next week as Wyndham Evans. You actually like his commentary, which is, by and large, a lot of people now are saying, please get Wyndham Evans off Swans TV. He's doing my nutting.
He's not my favourite Swans TV commentator, but in small doses, he is entertaining.
I'm going to introduce this piece. I am going to use it this week. I won't ask you to contribute. What we'll do is we'll pick one person a week to give an unpopular opinion. Seeing as you've kind of half given one there, Gitto, I'll throw it on to Steve for next week to think of an unpopular opinion to bring to the pod. My unpopular opinion is that I don't think Woodman is anywhere near the finished product that people make out that he is. And I know that we think... he's a decent championship standard keeper, and certainly for the first half of last season, he proved that he was very good and very much a player with big potential. Then you start seeing the shaky signs. He suddenly stopped coming off the line for crosses, and now he's looking more and more like we've put a centre half in goals because the keeper's gone off injured. That might seem overly critical, but go back to that first goal, Steve, and you can look at Norton and you can look at the whole defence, but if you just focus on Woodman, he ends up turning his back to the shot. He's not even trying to save it with his hands as a goalkeeper. That's basic 101, isn't it? That is straightforward. Make yourself big. He ends up trying to block it like he's in a wall for a free kick.
Yeah, it was bad. Like I say, you can pick out a few people on it. Off the top of my head, I've tried to block out the goal. But, I mean, he just seemed very rooted to his line, doesn't he? I think we've seen probably more of that as his time has gone on at the Swans. That's one thing I would say with Woodman. He did seem to lose a little bit of confidence maybe in the second half of last season. There were definitely some mistakes in there. In general, I do like him as a goalkeeper, but he was very unconvincing with that. Like I say, he doesn't seem to command that box so much anymore. I mean, if we're going to move on to the second goal as well, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? I mean, if you come out and you miss the ball, then in general it's probably going to be a goal, and that's what happened. But there were instances last season, weren't there? I think in the second half of last year where I think Derby game may have been one where I didn't think he had a great game, and he just he wasn't as good. I still like him. I don't think bringing him back was I in general I think it's a good move, but like you say, when you say he's not the finished article, I think that probably is a fair assessment.
I'm a Woodman fan, and I'd agree that he's not the finished article, but I do think he's a good keeper, and I do think he was good for pretty much the entirety of last season. You mentioned the Derby match there; he did go through a shaky patch around that period, but other than that, I thought he was pretty reliable throughout the season. I do think there is, though, something in this theory that as the season wore on, he just became a little less assured coming off his lines. Having said that, I don't think that's an excuse for the goal on Saturday. The only thing I can assume is that his brain switched off for about 5 seconds, because I mean, sometimes you see goals conceded and you think, why did the player do that? Why did he decide to do that? With that goal against Newport on Saturday, it was more a case of, wait, why didn't he come out and do something there? Like, we were all expecting him to come off. Like, even the commentators, like, and Woodman's going to come and collect this. But he didn't. He just stood there. And you're thinking, whoa, hang on a second. And Norton's at fault, I think, because he doesn't make much effort to get the ball. But in fairness, in Norton's defence, I think you would expect your goalkeeper to come out and deal with that kind of ball. I'm hoping it was just, a bit of rustiness. He wasn't really switched on because it was the first competitive match of the season. He's not been here full much. He's not had any real pre-season. I'm hoping that's it, and I'm hoping on Saturday against Preston he'll have kicked into gear and be back to his best. But it was worrying, and that second goal, it's not as bad as the first one. But like Steve said, if you do come out, you've got to make sure that you win that ball. And in fairness,
to be fair, he kicks the ball against the striker, doesn't he? But he needs to hit this. He needs to hit it out for a throw-in, doesn't he?
Yeah, he needs to be more forceful than that. I mean, he times it well. I mean, he gets there before Tristan Abrams does. He's measured that. He's timed his run very well. But he's got to clear him out. He's got to win that ball. And I guess perhaps in the modern era, I don't know, he may have been concerned about picking up a red card for excessive force or something like that. You can't just clear out the player these days the way you could before. I don't know, but I mean, he went in there to win that tackle, and he did just kick it against the striker. It's not the worst error that you will see, but it does have to go down as a goalkeeping error in my book. And coming just 40 minutes or so after a really bad error in the opening minutes. It just crowned a really bad half for Woodman on Saturday. It was not. I mean, along with that derby match, it was definitely his worst game in a Swans shirt.
Yeah, well, this is it, isn't it? And I mean, like, I know you want that reaction going into the weekend, and we all do. But it would be bucking a bit of a trend for him to come back to, as you say, the best. For me, at least, Gito, for him to come back to his best, because he'd be going back some 6 to 9 months for me, getting back to what we consider the Woodman that we fell in love with. Yes, he likes to play up to the crowd. Unfortunately, there isn't one there to play up to at the moment. But yeah, he seems to have lost that edge, that one that he did. That 18-yard box is his own. Something that needs to be worked on, because this seems very early to say, but this is exactly why we wanted to get rid of Nordfeldt, isn't it? Because he was absolutely useless when the ball came in the box, and we need a goalkeeper to come. We were spoiled. We had De Vries, we had Vorm, we had Fabianski.
I think Woodman's got a long way to go until pairing him with Nordfeldt. Come on now, he's had a bad day on Saturday, but listen.
It's my unpopular opinion show today, so it's going in there.
What we saw from Woodman last season, when you look at his performances over the course of the season and compare it with what we saw from Nordfeldt the previous season, it's chalk and cheese. Woodman, at the end of the day, cost us very few goals last season due to goalkeeping mistakes. Like the previous season, we were going into every single game pretty much expecting Nordfeldt to drop a clanger. Every single time we had a corner, you thought that it was going to end up in a goal because Nordfeldt could not do anything. And yeah, so I'm going to step in there and stop you from comparing to Nordfeldt. That is a blatantly unfair comparison to me.
You can only compare Nordfeldt to Jason Jones. That's it.
I mean, it's harsh on Jason Jones, I think. No, I think it's when you consider our set piece goals conceded last season was one of the best in the division, wasn't it? So I think we can cover that one off as me being a bit knee jerk after a horrendous performance. But yeah, let's hope he comes back firing and eager to make a point to prove that stupid idiot on that podcast wrong. We'll move on then from what was a very forgettable, embarrassing day out for the Swans and look ahead to the transfer window, which is still open, of course. And so there's a bit of business gone on since the last podcast. Well, today, even as we're recording this, it's been confirmed that Bertrand Selina is no longer a Swan, Steve. He's moved to a French side, Dijon. We'll wait and see if he cuts the mustard. Sorry. But,
I knew it. I knew
you knew it was going to come, Gitto. I mean, I just had to slip it in there before you did it. So I just had to put it there. Steve, it's a shame, isn't it? Because Selina is immensely talented, but has never really got going under Cooper.
Yeah, I think it is a shame. I mean, if you'd said at this time last year that he would be going for what we think is around about 3 million, I would say, as undisclosed fee, I think we'd have all been really disappointed because, you know, especially after that first year he'd had with Graham Potter in charge, and then last season started reasonably well, had a couple of goals early on, but then didn't score again after August, sorry. And it's just, they clearly have him and Cooper that they clearly don't see eye to eye in terms of, you know, Selina, I would say, probably sees himself as a 10, and I would say that I see him that way. Most people do. I know, through unpopular opinion, I know Gitto's brother is one of the rare people who did see him as a winger, because he told me on a Wales trip. But I think I would say he's a number 10 who's not played as a number 10. It's not got the best out of him, and that's where we've seen the problem. And then, you know, I think one thing that does frustrate me a little bit is that obviously when we moved to this different formation and we were then playing with a number 10, and I'm not saying Gallagher should have been dropped, but we could have even accommodated both. Gallagher could have dropped a little bit deeper, maybe, or we could have at least given Selina an opportunity in that position, but it didn't happen for whatever reason. But then when, you know, our form picked up really and Selina wasn't in the team, and I suppose it did make Cooper's life easier in terms of possibly trying to move him on, and that's what's happened really. But we do feel like it's maybe not a terrible deal because of the way things have panned out, but you know, we'd shifted him last summer, we'd have had a lot more money for him, so it is a little bit frustrating really. And he's a quality player, there's no two ways about it, in the right team with the right system, and him being played in his best position, but we haven't seen that. I don't think we were going to see that with Cooper in charge. So, you know, we are a club that needs money. At the end of the day, we can't afford to have people sitting on the bench. If we can probably shift them for a few quid, and we've taken that view. So, yeah, it's just a little bit of a shame, I think, because I think things could have definitely panned out differently.
Yeah, though it's fair to say Selina isn't completely blameless in all this. On the few opportunities he had to shine, he simply didn't perform. As Steve said, after August, he didn't score. And certainly latterly in the season, he was coming on and he was largely ineffective when used. And I mean, this is from a manager that is already reluctant to make substitutions. So when he brings someone on and he don't make an impact, it kind of vindicates his decision in that regard.
Yeah, as much as we've ranted about Steve Cooper's decision not to select Selina on more occasions and not playing him in his correct position, etc. I mean that too often this season, I think Selina's put in a 5 out of 10, a 6 out of 10 performance really, and we haven't seen enough 7, 8, 9 out of 10 performances from him in the past year. Who's to blame for that? I think it is a mixture. I think Cooper probably takes more of the blame because he's not been able to make good use of one of the most, probably the most creative. I don't think it's controversial to say he is the most creative player in that side. I mean, his stats of the previous season were among the best in the division for chance creation, and just watching him play week in, week out, you can see he's always capable of just doing something a little bit different. Catching teams off guard with playing that incisive pass, and that was something that we did miss for most of the season, and it's something that we could have really used from Selina, but Cooper did not want to play him in his best position, did not get the best out of him. But it seemed like after that had gone on for a while, just Selina then didn't put in the same effort when he was picked then. And I mean, especially after lockdown, the few occasions that we did see him, I thought his performances were very low energy and he didn't really look that motivated. I'll be honest. You could say it's a manager's job to motivate a player, but I think when you see the way Selina approached some of those games, it was clear that his head wasn't in the right place. He wasn't interested anymore. And that's why this isn't a surprise, really, that he's being sold. Having said that, I am a little bit gutted, if I'm being honest, because I am a big Selina fan. I absolutely loved watching him under Graham Potter. I thought he was fantastic to watch. I mean, there were some people, mostly from outside the club, who thought that he was inconsistent that season. That was a totally unfair criticism in my eyes, because whenever I saw him, I thought he was capable of doing something. I always thought that he was very involved in our attacks, and we always played our best when he was at his best. And I thought that he was a fantastic player to watch, who was going to go on to great things. And I still can't understand really how Cooper did not make the most of him and see his natural attributes for what they were when he first joined. And I do think we've wasted a fantastic talent. I think he's a player that could, if he plays his best, would improve us now. There's no doubt about that. And I think he could go on to be worth more than £3 million if he can find that old form again. And that old form shouldn't be too difficult to find, because he was very good for us last season. That was the previous season under Potter. He's also continued his very good form at international level for Kosovo, where he is regularly one of their best players in a team that does have quite a few good number 10s. I hope he goes to Dijon and gets his head back in the right place and shows people what he's capable of, because he is extremely talented. There's no doubt about it.
I thought you were just going to say he is mustard, and then you would have just taken the points, but no, you can't, because I've already said it. There we are. I
probably would have used it if you had already hogged that joke for yourself.
Sorry, I didn't even... I mean, that would have been a better punchline than my one, so yeah, I'm sorry for that. Steve, is it fair to say, I know I'm not the architect of this thought, but I've seen it on Twitter and I agree with it, that Selina perhaps doesn't fit the workhorse mentality, or the sort of player that Cooper looks at. And if you look at the players regularly used by Cooper last season, they have to cover the ground defensively as well. And Selina perhaps not so much in the defensive aspects.
Yeah, possibly. And I think that's probably a fair assessment. Maybe that's why as well he didn't play him as a number 10, and by trying to play him up wide means you do have to do a bit more defensive work. And again, I think he's not necessarily huge on maybe like creative type players, maybe players that probably cover more ground, I suppose, probably of what he seems to prefer, I would say. That's probably the key difference between him and the previous manager. But yeah, but it is frustrating, isn't it? Because I mean, you do need creative players as well. And how many games did we have last year where we were just not creating things? And you think if he played down the middle, it would have been better. He did obviously play down the middle in a few games, and I thought we did all right when that happened, but obviously not all right enough. I know a lot of it was down to stats, because he was challenged on it at a fans forum that I was at, and he basically said apparently he creates more and offers more of a threat when he's playing out wide, which isn't something that I buy, if I'm honest with you. But that was the reason that was given either way. So yeah, it's not a view that's changed, really, is it?
No, go on.
I think we should be a little bit worried now that Selina's gone. If nobody's coming in to replace him, I do think that number 10 position, even though we don't really play with a number 10 of his type anyway in the current position, in the current formation, but if we did want to go back to say a 4-2-3-1, say that we are forced to playing something like that, our options to cover that base are a little bit limited. I mean, we've got Jan Dander, but I think we're all agreed that Jan Dander is not the finished article. There are areas of his game that he needs to work on. Many of them similar to Selina's, ironically. He needs to beef up and be a bit tougher and improve in that respect. I don't think Andre Ayew is at his best when he's playing in that kind of position. Morgan Gibbs-White has been touted as somebody who can play that position, but I've always thought of him as a deeper lying midfielder than that. So if we do,
Baez has got to step up, really, hasn't he? And not to be too controversial again.
Baez hasn't really played a number 10 for as a senior, really, has he? I mean, he played that position in the under 23s, but we haven't. I can't really remember him playing much in that position.
No.
Since he moved into the first team, he has been played more as a number 8, really. So if we are forced to go to to switch to that kind of formation, that's going to be a bit tougher now that Selena's not in the lineup, and we've lost Gallagher, of course, which was to be expected.
Yeah, well, it's 3 million we reckon in the bank, so we'll see what happens with that. See where it goes. Let's hope that we can identify someone, or we've already identified someone that we can bring in to replace him. More midfielder news actually, because since the last podcast, it must have been since, it's rumoured that Watford interested in club captain Matt Grimes, Steve. 10 million roughly, I think, has been touted as the sort of figure they're looking at. They've just yesterday sold Decore to Everton for 20, or just shy of 20 million. It's a lot of money, and it'd be unfair for me to say either way, because I mean, some people think I've got a vendetta against Grimes, but do you think that maybe he's one player you wouldn't sell irrespective of the price on the eve of the start of the season?
I think at 10 million you've got to be tempted. I think that's roughly his value. I'll be honest. I know, transfer fees are wild, and it's very difficult to see what a player's value is. But I think if you sold Grimes for £10, I don't think you'd be cheating Watford in doing that. I'm
pretty sure I just heard you say £10, but if it may be my my hearing that's gone.
I thought they said 10 million, but if I did say £10, then that would be a little bit below his market value. I think Grimes is a very good midfielder. He's very important to the way we play. I thought he was one of the players who really upped their game when we switched formation. At the end of last season, I think that if you give him options out wide, players hugging the touchline like we did with our wing backs towards the end of last season, if he's got those options to just ping a pass to the wings, it helps so much, because I think he really struggled with the narrowness of our system for most of last season. It just cut off his passing options, and it really made life very, very difficult for him, as it did for many other players as well. But the way he plays, he needs the ability to stretch the play, to stretch the pitch, and that's what we gave him. I think we did see his best again towards the end of last season, having gone through a little bit of an indifferent season up until that point. I think it's fair to say. I think it would be a heck of a loss this close to the season if we were to lose him. The fact that he's our captain as well, I know it divides opinion among the fans whether he's suited to that role, but it just the whole idea of losing your captain a few days, either a few days before the season starts or very early on in the season, it's just very damaging for the psyche. It's a heck of a blow for the squad, and I'd love to think that we could keep him. If you believe the rumours, last week he was on the verge of joining Watford, but it's gone quiet now. So hopefully that's a sign that Watford may be looking elsewhere. But I don't think this is over yet by any means.
Do you share the opinion of Gito there that maybe it's not over yet, but we'd be struggling to turn down that sort of money?
Yeah, it's definitely not over. But as you say, we're looking at 10 million. It's going to be difficult to turn that down, if we're being honest. That's just a factor that we probably do need to sell a couple of players in this window, obviously, where, at this stage, we have made some money on Selena, as we've said, but probably need AU's wages off the books. We were probably looking at maybe Joe Rodon going somewhere. That's not happened as yet. So, unfortunately, if we were to get a good offer, I think we'd probably have to take it, which isn't great at this stage of the season. Just before a ball's kicked, and obviously he's the captain. So, yeah, it's one of those things you'd like to turn it down, or you'd like to think that we could, but I think realistically we can't. So, that's sort of how I see it, unfortunately. So I think if a bid does come in that is around what, where we'd be considering to sell, maybe around 10 million, then the chances are he will leave, I would have thought.
Yeah, and I guess in that regard, you'd be looking at consolidation then, because financially, we'd almost then be on a level pegging on trying to keep our heads above water. We're still obviously in a bit of a financial black hole, and that would go a long way when you consider that Andreu's contract will be coming up next season, and there'll be a lot of money freed up elsewhere. So maybe that will come into consideration. We'll see. That's what the transfer window's about. Last bit of news: we've been linked with Brighton striker Victor, surname Gito. That's my pronunciation of it. I'm not even going to attempt it, to be honest with you, mate.
Victor Gyökeres in Hungarian. So I'm lucky. I've got Hungarian relatives, so my Hungarian pronunciation isn't too bad.
There we are. Any thoughts? I know very little about him. You both made good points before we started recording that you couldn't get a sniff in a Brighton team that had Glenn Murray up front. So maybe, but we can't look at that, can we? We just have to take him up as we see him, if we get him.
Yeah, I got a feeling that this may be this season's Kalulu, a player who kind of looked exciting when he was very, very young, playing in kind of under 17s and under 19s level for his country, and hasn't really made the breakthrough at senior level that people expected him to. So let's take a punt on him. I think that's my reading of this situation, because I mean he's 22 years old. He's not a young kid anymore. He's just getting to a stage where you expect a player to break through to senior football. He's never ever made an appearance in a senior league game in any country, including in his native Sweden. He's only played second and third tier football in Sweden, and then he signed for Brighton 2 years ago, and he's never played a league match for them. He's played a handful of cup games, including, well, mainly in the EFL trophy, the Checkatrade trophy, whatever that joke's being called these days. So, I mean, none of us have ever seen him play. None of us had heard his name before this week. I've seen a couple of videos on YouTube. That's about it. He looks quite tall, looks like an out-and-out striker. But very, very difficult to say how good he is. But the fact, like you said, that he's not been able to break into a Brighton team, not being able to get a sniff of that Brighton team, even though, I mean, they're not known for the strikers, Brighton. I mean, they've had problems finding the back of the net over the last few years, and he's never ever been given a chance. I mean, it's not the most encouraging. And when you think we're looking for somebody to replace Ryan Brewster, I mean, I don't think any of us thought that we'd get anybody of Brewster's quality in this summer. But you want somebody that can, come close to that. I'm hoping I'm not being too dismissive when I say he doesn't really sound like he fits that bill. I'm hoping I'm wrong, or that that we are looking at another striker as well as Gyökeres. But yeah, it's difficult to say how good he is exactly. But if you just look at the best statistics, it's not one to get the heartbeat racing.
Well, if we sell Grimes for 10 million and Selina's gone for 3, we only need to find 7 million to buy Brewster off Liverpool, apparently. Which is not actually. Do you remember in last week's podcast when I made that tongue-in-cheek joke about Lukaku having his Lukaku moment by missing a penalty in a final? And actually, it turns out Lukaku's story was written off the back of that, and I joked that Brewster's may have been, and in fact since then Liverpool have suggested they may be open to sell. Obviously very different circumstances here, in that they'd be looking to sell. It's almost like an extended loan, because they'd be putting in a fanciful buyback clause on him, which I guess has its merits as well. But in fantasy land, Steve, £20 million for Ryan Brewster. If Liverpool slapped a £35 million buyback price, and we could scurry up the funds, would you put that on Ryan Brewster, knowing that you'd done that by getting rid of Selina, Grimes, another, whatever, to do so, or would you plug the holes elsewhere, just off the cuff?
There's no way we could pay anything like that for him, basically.
We are in my fantasy land now. In my fantasy land, we scrounged together 20 million, and we can plug holes in the rest of the team, or we can go and get Ryan Brewster.
We just can't do it, unfortunately.
You're not even going to entertain my fantasy world.
No, it's just, if we sold AU for 10 million, we sold Rodon for 20, we sold Grimes for 10. and then I don't know, we sold Conor Roberts for 10, so we brought in 50 million. Then maybe you could just about entertain it, but you'd be talking like those levels, like for me, because it is so extreme. Like we just can't afford to do anything like that. I mean, I suppose you could have argued last summer when we sold Dan James and we sold McBurney, and then if we'd sold a Roden, maybe then you could have looked at it like that. But the answer is no. Unfortunately, we can't. I'd say for like a lesser Prem team, that could be a great deal, like for 20 million and get him in, and then bangs in a load of goals. Liverpool think, oh, actually, maybe we need him. But yeah, for a club like us, there's not a hope in hell's chance.
There's two sides to that coin as well, Gutto, isn't there? And that if you're buying Ryan Brewster for 20 million, you're buying him because not just because of what he produces now, but because he comes with bags of potential, a young, exciting English centre forward, and you're thinking pound signs. And if Liverpool slap in a mediocre buyback price on it, you lose the edge on that straight away.
Yes, but I mean, if you, I mean 20 million. If you get the chance to buy Ryan Brewster for 20 million, I'm not saying that we can, because we definitely can't. But if there is a Premier League team out there that's looking for a young striker and has 20 million to spend, I think that would be a heck of a buy. I mean, Ollie Watkins has just gone to Aston Villa for 28 million, possibly rising to 33 million. I mean, Watkins is a few years older than Brewster, and I'd say Brewster's potential is significantly more than that. I don't think there's much difference in quality right now between what you get with Watkins and what you get with Brewster. I'd say if any club has that money to spend, even with the buyback clause, go for it, because I think he will score goals at Premier League level if you can give him the chances. And the way young English players, their value increases automatically these days with age. I mean, especially as a striker, it's not going to take long for him to reach that £35 million valuation. I mean, it's hard to see anybody losing money on that kind of investment without there being some kind of horrible injury or something like that to him. So yeah, if I was Sheffield United or any of the other teams rumoured to be interested in him, just go for it. You won't regret it.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. There's about 20 clubs ahead of us in the pecking order, I think, if he does, even if he does get sent out on loan, because there's a higher standard of football waiting for him now, isn't there? So yeah, that Brighton striker needs to come in. He's got big boots to fill, isn't he? If we do bring him in. So that's the transfer business to date. Nothing else to report that I'm aware of. So let's move on now to the Twitter question of the week. And this week we asked you for season predictions. We need your predictions for the upcoming championship season. Which 3 clubs will get promoted, which 3 clubs will get relegated, and where will the Swans finish? So, Craig Davis replied the top 3, or the 3 to go up rather, Forest, Watford and Norwich. The 3 to go down are Luton, Wickham and Rotherham, and he fancies the Swans to finish 11th. Rhys McMillan says he doesn't want to predict because he doesn't want to jinx us, but if we keep most of our key players and bring in a striker and another centre-back, we can challenge for the top 6 again. Gertson says Forest, Watford and Brentford to go up. Rotherham, Birmingham and Sheffield Wednesday to go down, and Swans to finish 12th. Craig Owen says Stoke, Watford and Norwich to go up. Barnsley, Luton and Sheffield Wednesday with the points deduction going down, and the Swans to finish 13th. Ashley SCFC says Watford, Norwich and the Swans to go up. So it's the first time we've read one that says the Swans will go up. Sheffield Wednesday, Rotherham and Wickham to go down, and the Swans to finish 4th in that table. Tim Cox says, a long way to go in the transfer market, but as it stands now, Watford, Norwich and Brentford to go up. Rotherham, Sheffield Wednesday and Wickham to go down. Swans to finish 12th. He can't see us scoring enough goals. Scott Elvins says Watford, Norwich and Brentford to go up. We're seeing a lot of this, aren't we? Relegated Sheffield Wednesday, Barnsley and Rotherham. And Swans finish 9th. Detroit Jackalope says Brentford, Forest and Watford to go up. Luton, Wickham and Sheffield Wednesday to go down. Swans to finish 9th. Unless they have another great January window, then they challenge the playoffs 5th or 6th. Ross Power said Watford, Brentford, Derby to go up. Sheffield Wednesday, Luton and Wickham to go down. Swans will finish 14th. And finally, Dan Evans said Brentford, Norwich, Watford to go up. Wickham, Sheffield Wednesday, Huddersfield to go down. And Swans finish 9th. Steve, there's quite a few recurring names there. I think Watford, Norwiches and your Brentfords, they're hotly favoured by the Swans fans to be successful this season. And by and large, we're going to have a mid-table finish.
Yeah, my thoughts are sort of similar to that. I mean, I'll go with Norwich first. I think Norwich, actually, the way that they managed themselves last season is going to benefit them hugely now because they didn't spend much money. So obviously they don't really need to sell. I know 1 or 2 have gone. But, I mean, if you look at obviously because of the pandemic at the moment, I think teams in our division really are not going to spend that much money. So then Norwich can just keep their players and will have a very good chance, I would have thought, of going straight back up. At least that's the way I'm looking at it. I mean, you look at Watford as well. They've got quite a useful side, I would say. They've not lost many at this stage. So I can understand why they're the favourites. I mean, no one's really said Bournemouth, have they, the other relegated team? I think I sort of understand that because obviously the manager's gone. A couple of players have gone. I think we're all expecting maybe more players to leave them because they do have some star names. And it's probably a surprise, really, that they went down. I mean, they should be disappointed because I think they definitely had the players to dig themselves out, but defensively obviously had problems. I mean, I still think they'll be decent enough. I'm not sure where the top 2 would be beyond them. So I'd probably say Watford and Norwich as my 2 for the top 2, and then you're looking at, like I said, I think Brentford are probably going to do well. I know Watkins has gone now, but they brought in Tony, haven't they, from Peterborough, so you'd expect him to be quite useful. I think Forest, I'm not so sure. I think they'll be decent, but I don't really see them trouble in the top 2, although they're famous last words. No one has said Cardiff. Obviously, they were in the playoffs. I think they'd probably be similar. I mean, and I'm looking at the Swans. I'm looking at the middle, I would have thought. The goal scoring does seem to be a problem. And also, as we say, the transfer window's open for another month yet. You could easily see another couple of players going. And then, obviously, the closer they go to the window, the harder they're going to be to replace. So, yeah, I think we're probably going to be in the middle. That's my my outlook.
So give me your 3 then to go up, and I'll jot them down.
Okay.
It's going to look terrible at the end of the season as usual.
Okay, I'll go Norwich and Watford as 2, and then I don't actually know who to go for the other one. I'm honest.
So those are your automatics, yeah?
Yeah, they're my automatic 2. I suppose Brentford would probably be my other one.
Okay. Do you want to include relegated, or should we just stick with them and the Swans? It's up to you.
It's up to you. We can go. My relegated would be Sheffield Wednesday because obviously they've got a points deduction, and they did end the season quite badly. Wickham probably because they've done very well to come up, haven't they? I think they're going to struggle. Hopefully they will stay up. I'd like to see them stay up. Then the other teams that go down, probably Rotherham, just because they consistently bounce between the 2 divisions. So you've got to fancy them to struggle as well, I would have thought.
Okay. Gito, do you agree with the responses this week?
The one thing that struck me more than anything else was amazement that so many people are tipping Forest. I don't get that one at all, I'll be honest. I mean, they had such a collapse towards the end of last season. They were decent. They were tough to beat, but it does look like a team that the manager's lost his way there towards the end of last season. I don't think their squad is among the best in the division, I'll be honest. And they've lost Matty Cash. I can see that being a situation where the manager's sacked within the first few weeks, if I'm being honest, if they don't get off to a good start, because they're going to be under pressure after surrendering their playoff spot the way they did to us. and I don't really see what they've done in the close season to justify this belief that they're going to be challenging for promotion next season. I could be totally wrong. I mean, the Championship's an unpredictable league, but yeah, that was a weird one. But other than that, I'm going for the same kind of names again. I think Norwich and Watford are going to be strong. Norwich aren't going to lose many players this summer. If they can get Teemu Pukki scoring again, that's going to be a huge bonus for them. I mean, he hasn't scored in his last 17 for club and country, so that isn't necessarily going to happen. They do need to work a bit on him, but at his best, he's a fantastic scorer. And they've got a few extra players. They brought in Gibson from Burnley again. If they can get him back to his best, he's a very good defender. It's just and generally their squad was very good for a Championship level 2 years ago. It's mostly intact from then. I think they'll be a threat for. I think they have a chance of making the top two. Watford are probably my shout for automatic promotion because, I mean, you look at that squad. It's not a squad that really should be in the Championship, in my opinion. They've got a lot of talent there. They haven't lost many players yet. A couple of youngsters who will bolster that team. Big question mark for Watford is how the new manager is going to settle in. But I can see I at the moment I can't see anything, but I can't see beyond Watford as obvious candidates for the title. But that third one, then after what I think Norwich and Watford look like pretty solid candidates for promotion. But after that, there are a lot of clubs that you look and think, yeah, they could do it, but they've got their obvious problems. I'm going to go for Brentford, but I'm very much aware that they've just sold Ollie Watkins and that Ben Rama could go. I think it all hinges on Ben Rama. I think they've got a decent replacement in Ivan Toney for Ollie Watkins. If Ben Rama goes, that's more difficult to replace, in my opinion, and that may hamper them in their quest for promotion. But they're the three that I'm going to go for in any order: Norwich, Watford, and Brentford. Other ones I consider. I am a bit worried about Cardiff because I think Kiefer Moore is going to suit their style, and he could be very potent for them. They've not got the best squad, obviously. They don't play the best football, but they are effective, you know. And it wasn't as if they finished last season on a low. They finished it on a bit of a high, despite going out in the playoffs. Yeah, I think they could be a dark horse, as could Derby, if they can just find goals. I'm not seeing many great strikers in that side at the moment, but if they can find a really good source of goals, then I think they've got an outside chance to the playoffs as well. So those are the teams that I'm looking at, sort of obvious candidates for promotion.
Have you got a bottom three?
My bottom three, I think Wickham and Rotherham are going to struggle. They've not got the best squads. I mean, the fact that Wickham in the Championship in the first place is sensational. Fair play to them. I think they will both find it hard to stay up. And then the other team, it's a toss-up between Sheffield Wednesday and Birmingham. Sheffield Wednesday's points deduction makes it very difficult for them. But Birmingham, I mean, every time I saw them last season, they were bad. They were really bad. I don't know how they got the points they did. I really don't. And they've not really strengthened that squad from what I can see. I think they will be struggling this season. And this may be the year that they finally go down to League One. Finally, after years of staying up and doing very little in the Championship, I think they may actually go down this season.
It was a weird one with them, wasn't it? Having already agreed that Pep Clotet wasn't going to stay on, and yet he did, and then he got sacked, and then it was just a mess, wasn't it? The season was just a write-off.
That club is just so strange. It really is. They're never able to shake off like the troubles of their past. There's always some kind of looming threat of points deduction. There's some kind of financial issues at that club. You know, and I look at the squad. The squad isn't great. It really isn't. It's pretty mediocre as a squad. And they were really bad last season. I think they'll struggle, and I think they will go down even with Sheffield Wednesday's points deduction.
Yeah, so you're going to tip Birmingham for the drop with Wickham and Rotherham, yeah? Okie doke. For what it's worth, I've gone for Watford Norwich. As Gito, well, both of you said, really, they're hard to look past at the moment in terms of Premier League standard squads, and neither of them have suffered too badly so far in the transfer window. Still time for that, of course. Actually, it's quite interesting what you said about Derby, because I've actually put them in there. Now, the obvious bet may have been Brentford, but you do get this playoff final hangover sometimes, or quite often, don't you? Especially with Brentford, because everything was geared up for them this season to get promoted. The whole of the Sky Sports were on their side. Everything was Brentford. It was almost like Liverpool and Brentford for the last 2 months. Could not get enough of either of them. So, with that in mind, it just felt like fate had to deal them Premier League football in their new ground. Historic, yada, yada, yada. Then that happened, and now I feel like that's going to impact them, as well as, of course, the transfers that are happening. They're getting very good money for their players, but they are losing their best players as it stands.
One thing I will say about that is the last 2 playoffs have been won by teams which lost in the previous year's playoffs. It's not like a massive run. It's not like, that's a good stat to show that Brentford are going to come back strong and do it. And of course, Brentford are just appalling in the playoffs. So if they don't get the top 2, they're probably not going up, are they?
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? I think sometimes, no matter what happens, there's a curse or something hangs over a club, doesn't it? Where you just feel like, God, it's never going to happen for you. So yeah, I've actually put Derby in there. There's always seemed to be lurking around those playoff spots anyway, and maybe a signing or 2 away from making it happen. I just think Brentford may have had their chance for now in the summer just gone. So we'll see. The bottom 3 I've gone for Sheffield Wednesday with a points deduction, and I've gone for Birmingham and Rotherham. So I think it's a little bit of a mix of all of it. We've all kind of gone for the same sorts of teams anyway. So we'll see how stupid we look at the end of the season. Thanks everyone for your predictions there with what's coming up. Keep an eye on Twitter. There's going to be loads going out this season. You're going to get annoyed. You're probably going to block us and stop following us on Twitter, because we're going to be putting out clips of the show. We're going to be putting out polls. We're going to put questions, etc. And actually start putting stuff out to do with other features which we're bringing up. And that's what we're moving on to now, actually. New quiz we're going to do for this season. I'm going to try and do one every week if time allows. They're going to be quite short. 5 questions, gents. Straightforward here. 3 points if you get it correct. 1 point if you get it incorrect. Minus 1 point if you get it incorrect. And just shout your name when you know the answer, so that we can get the first one and gets the answer to the question. Guess what I call the quiz? You won't guess. I'll tell you anyway. This Swan's a toughie. Get it? This Swan. It sounded really good when I wrote it down.
That's worse than my eventual points total.
I thought that was really good. This Swan's a toughie. Do you know what?
Give up your day job.
Jesus Christ! Right, back me up, Twitter, for God's sake. I thought that was a good one. You know, it's hard to make this work. Anyway, this one's a toughie. Week 1, quiz 1. Question 1, just shout your name. How many points did the Swans finish on last season?
Steve?
Yep.
I think it was 71.
Steve, minus 1 point, mate. 70 points we finished on.
I love that. I backed out. I just said I'm going to let Steve cost himself a point. That might be one major save me if I just let
That's not the spirit of the game.
He's going to let Steve just answer them all and hope he gets them all wrong. Question 2. Again, Gito, is your mic working? Yeah, it should be working. It should be fine. You just shout your name out, yeah. How many goals did top scorer Andreu end up with, including playoffs, last season in all competitions?
Gito.
Yeah.
I let Steve do the last one, so I'll guess. Did he score 14?
He actually ended up with 18 goals.
That was way off. Way off.
No worries at all. So we're both on -1. We're back to where we started. This could actually turn out to be terrible. Neither are we going to end up on positive points here. No.
Maybe what you'll have to do is, if they're all going to be like this, whoever's the closest.
Okay. Well,
that's easy for you to say after you were 1 out on one question, knowing that I'm 4 out on the other.
Well, no, I might. Well, no, but we.
Talk
Well,
about
no, we'd
making
have to.
rules up as you go along just to suit your agenda. Come on.
I'm just,
ridiculous,
you know,
Steve. Yellow
it's
card.
just. Well, do you all want to both be on minus? I'm just thinking if they're like specific like that, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, they are. They're not all going to be like that. And anyway, we're a work in progress. We'll see how it goes. Next one's actually multiple choice, so wait to the end of the question. How many goals? Oh, this is a toughie. This one's a toughie, Gitto, right? I don't think I'm going to shout your name out here. How many goals were scored by players with squad numbers 1 to 11 last season? Was it 9, 13, 16, 18, or 20 goals? Who's going to take a punt?
Ghetto.
Go on.
I'm going to go for the lowest number.
You're going to go for 9 here?
It's gotta
You
be
weren't
more than
far
that.
off, mate. It was 13. It was the other number. It was the next one up.
Wasn't quite that bad.
It wasn't quite that
I
bad.
was, I was trying to work it out.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah,
Because Baston had 5
Baston,
or 6, didn't he?
yeah.
Selena had 2.
Damn it.
he was
and I was
the
thinking,
he was
I
the
know-
red herring there.
Yeah, I know
Baston.
Jay Fulton got a few. And then Van der Horn had 1, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's probably about it.
Yeah. Grimes
Yeah.
didn't score a single goal, did he?
No, he didn't score. Peterson didn't score.
No.
So he's 11, wasn't he? None of the defenders scored other than Van der Horn, I don't think, did they?
No, I don't think they did. No.
So,
Well,
yeah.
not.
And Barry Mackay
did,
didn't
but
score.
He's got higher numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other one's Barry Mackay. Obviously, didn't score because he's crap.
Yeah.
Connor Roberts scored, didn't he? But
Yeah.
again, higher number
23.
again.
Yeah.
Just take the defender thing. Question 4. So far, this sparkly new quiz, we've got Steve on -1 and Gitto on -2. Maybe I need to restructure the points rather than the questions. So I need to
Well,
do
what you
everything.
could have done would be like, I don't know, you could say, like, you know, the points one, like, you could have said, right, what, you say, no, you say, I have to give an answer, and Gitto would have to go higher or lower. And then, so obviously, that would be a way of
this is
doing
good.
it.
I'll do it again. Next week we'll do it. Should we start the quiz again? No, we won't. No, but we'll do that for next week. Higher or lower? Yeah, okay. Especially in those questions where their numbers related. Right, fingers on the buzzers. There's no buzzers anyway. Question 4. What was the aggregate score of Swansea versus Barnsley last season?
Ghetto.
Yep.
It was 1-1.
Well done. Oh, he's in positive numbers. Brilliant.
Yes.
It's amazing. Gitto, you're on 1. That's amazing. Fantastic. Yeah, 1-1 draw and a 0-0 draw. This is where I've thrown a spanner in the works of question 5. The last question, you might have actually... anyway. This could potentially be worth 5 points, okay? Because it's a who am I? And I'm going to read out 3 clues. And if you answer it after the first clue, it's 5 points. The second clue, 4 points. And the third clue, the final clue, is back to your standard 3 points. Still only -1 point if you get it wrong. However, you're frozen out. So then you don't get any of the other clues. That make sense?
Go on.
Right. Who am I? Clue 1. I played for Swansea 389 times over 14 years, starting in 1971. Move on. Clue 2. I was born in Llanelli and played right back. But
Steve,
Oh, go on then.
Damn it.
I think it's Wyndham Everton.
You're right. Well done,
Yeah.
Steve. On 4 points. Oh, hang on. This is tight. Steve, minus... Oh, it's not that tight. Sorry. No, Steve, you ended up on 3 points. 3 points and Gitto ended up on 1. Oh, that's not bad, though, is it? That isn't bad. It was an inaugural quiz there. I think you both did really well. Steve, you won that one 3-1. And for the season, you're up 1-0. So congratulations.
Yeah.
If I get off 0 this season, I will be chuffed.
You are, well, I mean, I'm just going to keep presenting because there's no chance I'm doing a quiz. So thanks both for that, for entertaining me with that one. we'll keep that going through the season. If you've got any other ideas of stuff we can chuck in, or just think that was absolutely terrible, then do let me know, and we'll make notes and do something about it going forward. Second feature I'm chucking at you straight in a row here, guys. We might have to jiggle this up going forward, but this one is called Battle Jacks. Now, this one you do kind of know about because we were talking about it on a Twitter conversation, Twitter group, where we were saying that. So I'll explain how it works first of all. Let me just get my. I've written something out here because I'm going to make a statement, one that conceivably could be argued either way, and it's between Gitto and Steve. Then just to do just that, argue for or against. I'm going to flip a coin, and where their winner gets to choose whether they wish to argue for my statement or against it. Bear in mind, and it's worth bearing this in mind, this isn't actually their opinions. It's literally they're forced to argue for or against my statement. I'm going to make it quite easy.
That's an important disclaimer there, just before we get any complaints about any controversial views we may have.
I'm not going to go too controversial in the first week. It's just going to be interesting to see someone who's got the shitty end of the stick try to argue their case. So essentially, we're going to have 30 seconds then for each person to try and argue their case. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because when it goes on Twitter to ask you to vote on it, I'm not asking you to vote on who you agree with. That's not the point. The point is, who do you think's made the best argument? Because one of these you're going to believe is the right answer anyway. And to be honest with you, we're all probably going to think it's the right answer, but it's not about whether it's the right answer or the wrong answer. It's about who puts up the best argument. And that's the distinction I want to make, because I don't want you just to say, oh, I agree with that point. That's not the idea of it. Anyway, yada yada, I'm going to stop waffling on. This week, I've gone for... This is my statement, anyway. Clubs should only be allowed to send a player out on loan for one season while retaining control of their contract. Any subsequent loan means the player may opt to leave for free at the end. So, that's my statement. Steve, heads or tails?
Tails.
It is heads, I'm afraid. So, Gitto, you can choose whether you wish to argue for that statement or against it.
Oh, I don't know, actually.
I didn't go too controversial, this one. I think it's one of those ones you could conceivably argue either way.
Steve, which would you rather?
Oh, that's very gentlemanly of you.
I'm sort of similar to you, to be honest.
You know what? As Steve failed the coin toss, or didn't fail it, it's just a coin toss at the end of the day. Gitto, you have to argue for it.
Okay.
And Steve, you have to now argue against that statement. So, first and foremost, Gitto, you can argue for the statement that clubs should only be allowed to send a player out on loan for one season while still retaining control of their contract. Any subsequent loans come with a caveat that the player can then leave for a free transfer at the end of it.
Cool. Well, yeah, it goes without saying, basically, that is what should happen. I mean, you just have to look at a club like Chelsea, which hoards young players, keeps them locked up in their dungeon for years on end, doesn't end up selling them until they're like 35 and their entire careers have gone to waste. This has to happen to free the Chelsea prisoners. Big clubs are just holding on to these players, sending them out on loan year after year. Just look at, I think it's Michael Hector at Fulham. Eventually,
Time up. Oh, that 30 seconds flies by, doesn't it?
Wow, that flies. Yeah,
I thought it would drag, but well done. You've got plenty of content in there. You absolutely hate Chelsea.
I need to practice on keeping things brief, man.
No, but you made some good points. Steve, you got a battle on you. You've got to tell me that is a terrible idea. 30 seconds start now.
But I don't agree with any of that, if I'm honest with you. Purely because I think if you want to loan players out, then if you loan a player, say, out to League 2 or something like that, then he does well, then you're thinking, right, well, we'll loan him to League 1. And then from then on, you can see, right, well, we're in the Championship. He's proved he can do it in League 1. Now let's give him an opportunity, rather than just going, oh, yeah, well, he's had that one loan. You can't have another one. One loan isn't always enough. You need more than one. You need X amount of games to potentially build yourself up. Now, for some players, one loan might be enough, but not for all. You've got to treat each player individually.
Time. Well, that is bloody quick. I don't think 30 seconds is enough. I genuinely thought that would be too long and it would just be
Okay.
dead air. That was. I might have to extend that for next week, boys.
No, it's
I'm
good.
chuffed. I'm chuffed with that. You both did really well. And do you know what? I wanted to see how I felt. I'm torn because you both made really good points. So straight down the line, straight on
I don't know.
Twitter.
Steve convinced me. I'll be honest.
I mean, you mainly just talked about Chelsea, which is a very valid point, by the way.
Chelsea had abused it, haven't they?
Yeah, but let's not undo your brilliant arguments now, because I want to put it straight onto Twitter and ask people. We'll ask Dan to chuck a poll up with a sound clip of this and see what you think. Do you agree that they should only be able to send players out on loan for one season, or not? Is that total nonsense? Please let us know. I hope this goes down well. I think for a starter, you two did brilliantly, so I'm chuffed. And yeah, there's maybe more different features coming up, but yeah, those were a couple of ones I wanted to chuck in, and do you know what? Happy with it. Thought they went well. Not too much dead air, so I didn't completely fall flat on my face. So we'll move back now to something more regular that we do, and let's get back to the football, to the Swans, and let's look ahead to the opening day of the season, and we're looking at it with full of enthusiasm after that thumping defeat to Newport. Gitto, it's Preston.
Wow.
Oh dear, you didn't follow my enthusiasm.
No. Yeah, it's difficult to get that enthusiastic after we saw against Newport. You're asking for a big improvement in 1 week to go from, being outclassed by a League Two team to beating a team in Preston who, we're not too far off the playoffs in the Championship last season, and you'd expect them to be there or thereabouts again this year. Well, yeah, it's. I'm hoping that we've just that was the kick up the backside that we needed really against Newport, and that it's got us to actually focus and realize that we can't just turn up and win games. We actually have to put in a bit of effort and retain a shape. We'll have a couple of players back from international duty as well, so that should help the defence. But yeah, I'm hoping that Saturday's game is basically the reset. I mean, it is the start of the league season, isn't it? So in normal circumstances, I think we'd all be really excited for this match, thinking, oh, great, it's the first chance to actually see some competitive football in person after a long summer. But it's not like that. It's only been a month since the Swans last played, a competitive league game anyway. We've already had a League Cup match. We've not had much of a pre-season, and of course there aren't going to be any fans there. So the usual excitement which goes with the opening day of the season is obviously not there this time around. But still, it's good to have the Swans back. I'm just hoping that we get the Swans that we saw in the final month of the last season, turning up against Preston.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it, Steve? What Swans are we going to see, and what do we expect from this season? I mean, our first real snippets of it were highlights of a behind closed doors game against Southampton. Well, they're all behind closed doors now, aren't they? But yeah, which we got absolutely thumped in. And then obviously the Newport first competitive game, which was even worse. Maybe not as bad on the scoreline, but in terms of performance was absolutely horrendous. So if those Swans teams turn up, it's not going to be a great season or start to the season. But then if you look at the way last season ended, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? From what we saw for the majority of last season. So if we can pick up on league form, then we'll be great.
Yeah, I'm not worried. The Swansea way is we'll win Saturday. That's what we do. There's no logic for what I'm saying, because literally we were awful the other day, and literally you would think that team will not do much on Saturday, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if we saw a different team and we're all scratching our heads thinking, where the hell did that come from? Where was that on Saturday just gone? So look, Preston are a decent side. Well, they were last year. So they fell away a little bit, didn't they? But they do have Scott Sinclair, which is always concerning, given our record of ex-players doing a number on us. But yeah, it'll be, it's hard to say really, isn't it, how it goes? But there is a part of me that's definitely thinking we'll win and we'll all be scratching our heads, because that's what this football club does for some reason.
It is odd, isn't it? Because you look at that, and you could, as we both all said at the start of it, Gitto, that there was no positives to take from Newport at all, and yet we still have that little bit of. It's a football thing, isn't it? You look at it, and you could have just lost 4 games in a bounce, yet somehow 2:45 on a Saturday, you're kind of feeling like anything is possible. But when it comes to the start of a football season, even more so, isn't it? Even though we've played a competitive game, it's game 1. We don't care about the cup this season, do we? It's game 1 of the league now. You get that little feeling that maybe it could be our year.
Yeah, and genuinely, I mean, I can't say that I was particularly concerned about the result against Newport County last week. I was just a little bit surprised, I'll be honest, about how bad we were. I didn't expect much from that game, but even then, it disappointed quite badly. But I mean, I am one of these people who thinks, there is something in kind of these old records, like, if a club has a good playoff record traditionally, then it bodes well when they qualify for the next playoffs, etc. If they have a tendency to start seasons well, then yeah, that can sometimes carry on from one season to the next. And the Swans haven't lost an opening league match this season, I don't think, since 2013, is it? Which is a very long run, especially considering our opening day record up until that point tended to be pretty awful. For years, we always lost the opening day, always, and it didn't say anything about how well or how badly our season would go, but we always started the season badly.
We even lost on the league when we pissed it with Martinez, didn't we? We lost
did,
to Oldham, yeah.
Somehow,
really
that
weird.
match,
It seemed to be, didn't it, that if we lost on the opening day, we'd have a good season.
Yeah, and that match.
And also, if we have a good pre-season, terrible season, terrible pre-season, good season. So we've had a crap pre-season of what we've had.
That bodes well.
So I'd like us to lose against everyone in pre-season. Fuck it.
But yeah, I'm going to be excited for 3:00 on Saturday. And I remember actually just 2 years ago we were coming up against Sheffield United, and like Steve said, we'd had an okay pre-season. It wasn't great by any means, but we'd had a few draws, we'd had a few wins, and we'd had a few defeats. And we'd lost a lot of players, and I think there was a general sense of, we don't know how this season is going to go. This could go anyway. And we started off the season with a really promising result away at Sheffield United, and suddenly, there was excitement again. And the same thing could happen if we can get a result up at Deepdale. If we get a win there against a team who, give us a tough match the last time we went up there, then suddenly it's all smiles and we're on for another promotion push.
Yeah, well, it's the life of a football fan, Steve, isn't it? I mean, we could have, AU could come bursting out the blocks. Those rumours that are going around, aren't there, that there's potential that he may be in discussions over a new deal, substantially reduced wages. It seems like pie in the sky and really ridiculous at this stage and to talk about that. But you just need a couple of bits of news to come together. Just as our world fell apart the other week when Trevor Birch left and, talked of players leaving left, right and centre, and you just thought, wow, this is all falling apart now. A couple of bits of news can all of a sudden get fans talking, especially with social media, suddenly just saying, yeah, you know what, keep this team together, we'll get top 3, top 2, and you just feel like the start of the season can make or break your optimism, can't it, sometimes?
Yeah, it can do. I think everyone does read a bit too much into pre-season, really, don't they? I think just because it's something to analyse, type of thing, really. But so often it's just not a lot in it. They're there for fitness reasons, aren't they? Really, and obviously you don't want to pick up any injuries. That's where we'll do. And obviously, I think if I don't know, say we'd played Newport in the pre-season game and they'd beaten us 5 or 6-0, it might be a little bit different then. Because you're thinking, what the hell is going on? You shouldn't be taking a pasting like that. But I mean, in general, you can't read too much into pre-season. I mean, as we were saying before, wasn't it, about how we've had good ones and then we've not had great seasons, and we've had bad ones and we end up having good seasons. So yeah, it's I think everyone does get a little bit too carried away about them, don't they? I think not so much maybe this year, but I think definitely in the past. And I think as you as you follow football for longer, you probably don't read as much into it.
Yeah, I agree
Just
with that.
a little stat to give you a bit of hope. Preston ended the season on a bit of a downer. Really, their playoff hopes disappeared quickly after lockdown because they were one of the teams that didn't react very well to the post-lockdown climate. But if you look at the teams they've beaten, they only beat 3 teams last season, which finished the season in the top half of the table, which is quite bad, really. Only
Similar to us, isn't it?
If you look across the whole season, we beat quite a few teams who were finished in the top half of the table. Not just like
I don't think we did mind. I think we only had about 4.
No, we beat Leeds. We beat
Cardiff, Bristol
Cardiff.
City.
We beat Blackburn. No, we didn't beat Blackburn, do we? Bristol City.
That's it. There's one more, I think.
We beat
Preston. That's it. We didn't beat anyone else.
Really? Okay, so our records are pretty similar on that. But yeah, Preston haven't beaten the team which finished in the top half of the table since December 10th. Their only wins post-lockdown were against Sheffield Wednesday and Birmingham, both of whom were pretty poor post-lockdown. Before that, they beat Hull, Stoke, Wigan. They're all teams who finished in the bottom half of the table. So the stats suggest that they maybe can struggle to raise their games against the better sides in the division. And I'm hoping that we can still consider ourselves one of the better sides in the division, despite the Newport debacle.
Yeah. Well, I would say any omen. I'll take any omen as a good omen, to be honest with you. I had a conversation, Steve, with... I say a conversation, more like I put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago about... Saw a few people saying that, go back to the flat back four and stuff. And, of course... You don't always hit it right, and sometimes it looks horrendous when you play it. But for me, the 5-3-2 that we played with the wing backs we were playing end of last season, we stick with that if we've got the personnel to do so. Am I off the mark here? I just feel like that was the most entertaining part of the season for me by some distance.
No, I think ideally we would try and stick with that, but it sort of depends on what we've got available, doesn't it? I mean, if you're looking at the centre-half situation at the club at the moment, we are a little bit short. So then, like last week, obviously it meant that we had to play players out of position and that type of thing. So could argue maybe we shouldn't have done that for that one game. But I think in an ideal world, we did find a system that worked. So if we could stick with that, that would be probably for the best. Obviously, we have lost a couple of players in other positions as well, like obviously Brewster being mentioned. I mean, Jamal Lowe is maybe more of a winger than a striker in general. So by putting him up front there, maybe he's a little bit out of position. But I think we did find a way to get our best players into the team, as what it did seem like at the end of last season. But I mean, let's say AU goes, for example, then maybe we should revert to playing with wingers, because I think him playing in a 2 up front certainly seems to suit him. But I think it's always good to have a plan B. That's probably how I would look at it. I think, but if we're going to start the season, I probably would like to see us go with the formation that we went with after lockdown, because obviously it did prove to be successful for us.
Yeah, are you of that opinion as well, Gitto, or would you prefer to see us return to the usual the 4-5-1, if you like?
I thought Cooper struggled to make us click for most of last season playing that formation. So my instinct would be to say, stick with the 5-3-2. It didn't look. I think if you can make that work again, go for it. It just gives us that width, which we'd struggle to have otherwise, because our fullbacks are better providing that than our wingers are. So I'd say stick with that formation if we can, and try to make a success of that, because I thought that was that was the key element, probably, along with the goals of Ryan Brewster in getting us into the playoffs. That switch of formation, it just wouldn't have happened unless we'd done that. And I think fans enjoyed watching the way we played with that. We played better football. We played more effective football. If we can stick with that, unless Cooper has somehow over the summer found a way of making 4-5-1 work to the benefit of all of our players.
How would you set up then, Steve? If you're going with that, I mean, it was internationals as well on the weekend, wasn't it? I think we do have three good centre halves, don't we, to play in there? I mean, in Cabango, Roden, and Gehi, there's few teams in the division now who could probably boast to have such a strong three centre halves there. Would you start with them three?
Yeah, I think we'd go those three. Connor Roberts and Bidwell on the wings. Probably Smith with Grimes in the middle. Then Gibbs White just ahead of them. Lowe and AU up top. That's what I would have thought. I mean, maybe Carl Norton will play. He's probably the most unlucky player to miss out. And obviously, I know Fulton was in the team, towards the end of last season. But they're probably the only two who would be likely maybe to end up starting. Other than that, that's certainly how I see it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's the team I've got written down in front of me as well. So I don't know how do you see the similar sort of thing happening, Gito?
Yeah, if I was picking a team, I'd go for the same lineup. I would expect Norton to play probably. Perhaps, I mean, Gay or Cabango coming back from international duty may leave it a bit too late, and I think Norton. I mean, Cooper likes Norton as well. I think he will get picked ahead of probably Cabango to get Gay in the team. But I mean, I wouldn't argue with that. Norton showed at the end of last season that he's good in that position. So either way, I wouldn't be too bothered with that. But yeah, if it was up to me, I would go with the same team as you two.
Yeah. I'll see. Is this pending? What day are we on today now? Wednesday. The talk of the Brighton striker, if he comes in tomorrow and in time for the weekend, maybe he puts him straight in there. We know we've got that issue at the moment. Neither AU or Jamal Lowe are natural strikers. We don't really have a natural striker, which is concerning. We haven't got a senior natural striker anyway. So it would be interesting to see what happens there. We certainly need some reinforcements. I did forget actually when we were talking about transfer news earlier on that Jack Evans has gone on loan to Paphos FC in Cyprus. So he's going to spend a year out there, and hopefully he develops well for us. And but as I said earlier on, we should only be able to loan him out once because otherwise he'll have to walk away on a free. But no, we've got we got a team there potentially between the three of us that on the starting 11 is strong. I think. What I'm concerned about is falling into similar traps as last season and looking on the bench and thinking that's not going to change the game. Cooper's not going to make any subs, and the 11 on the pitch are going to get tired. Steve, is that a fair assessment? Do we have the reinforcements we need?
They're not great, are they? I think, for being honest, obviously, if we're looking going forward-wise, Liam Cullen did score a nice goal against Reading. Still only young. He's going to get more minutes this season, isn't he? We'll have to, be patient with him, I think, because, it's when you play young players, you can never be entirely certain how it'll work out. There's obviously Routledge in there who starred for us to get us in the playoffs, really, but this could be well be his last season, I would have thought. So, he can come on in some games, but he's not always going to have the desired impact, is he? And then, there's not a great deal else, is there? I mean, there's a Soro, who I'm not a big fan of. Peterson, who I think was a little bit unlucky, so he could maybe do something. I mean, there's not a lot else, is there? If we're being honest with you, it is a small squad. We do need those reinforcements. We definitely need another striker. There's no two ways about it, really. I'm sure we're looking, aren't we, by the sounds of it? But the bench doesn't look great. I can't lie.
Yeah, we are looking a bit thin on the ground, Gito.
Yeah, we're not blessed with options, are we? I mean, squad depth's been an issue now for a few seasons for us because we've just not been able to keep a big squad, and it's just reality. Is something that it's one of the challenges that Steve Cooper's just got to find a way around. Really, it's not going to change anytime soon. that's life as a Swansea City manager at the moment, unfortunately, and juggling the squad is going to be one of the big challenges for him this season, especially since it's a more congested schedule.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. If you recall last week, I said I was going to keep tabs on our score predictions. So delightfully, we all did terribly when we were predicting a Newport result. But I said I was terrible at it. I fluked my way to the top of the scoreboard because I guessed a 2-0 win rather than a 2-0 defeat. So I got the result correct. So I'm not claiming any glory for it. But as it stands, I've got a point on the leaderboard, gents. I'm top of the league. I'm happy to call it off right now because I'm not going to get any better than this.
How can you have a point for calling a right result the wrong way?
Because you get a point for the correct score, a point for the correct results, or 3 points for both. I thought that's how they all worked.
No, I thought it would be if you get a correct result, 1 point. If you get a correct score, 3 points. But you've got to get a correct score, as in like predicting a Swans win of 2-0.
Oh, that's making it up as you go along now, surely. I mean, you just took my point away from me. That's
well, yeah, because you don't deserve one.
You can't predict the team is going to win 4-0 and then get any kind of credit when they lose 4-0.
This is bollocks. Do you know what? This is bollocks. I reckon it happens like this, and I'm going to find out. And then if it's wrong, then I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Okay.
I'd argue you deserve a -1 for trying to think you deserve a point.
Right, this is bullshit. Fine.
There should be some kind of points deduction for this kind of shenanigans.
Right, okay. Fuck you both. I'm taking it off, and I'm going to say 1 point correct result, 3 points for result and score. Right, fine. I'm nothing if not fair, and this was a democracy, and you both bullied me. So, I got nothing then. So fine, at least I'm not bottom. I'm just drawing bottom. None of us scored anything then. Okay?
No.
Happy?
That's fine.
Happy.
I'm delighted, yeah. Everybody's happy that we lost to Newport.
Yeah. Please tune in next week to JackCast, where these three experts get nothing right again. Absolutely nothing right. Please do. Definitely worth another go at that then. So we'll have a look ahead to the Preston game and score predictions. Gito, if you want to go first.
I'll go for a 1-1, but I'm not sure how we're going to get our 1.
Okay. And Steve?
The last 2 years, we've won 2-1 on the opening day, so I'm going to go 2-1 again.
Okay, and I'll go for a 1-0 win. So, there we go. I've written them all down.
There we go. We've doomed the Swans to defeat them. Fantastic.
It is a bit ridiculous how bad last week was. We've gone for 2 draws and a win.
Yeah.
2 wins and a draw?
Yeah, 2 wins and a draw.
Oh, I told you it's the start of season optimism.
Yeah.
You know what I've learned? I've learned nothing from last season apart from the fact that when Cooper's forced into something, we actually look better for it. So, here comes an injury crisis. Yay! We can live in hope that he's seen sense at the end of last season, and we carry on playing the sort of free flow and attacking football, which actually made us think, maybe Cooper isn't completely a lost cause after all. Thank you both. That's it for this podcast. It's quite a lengthy podcast. If I just check the time of it, we're coming up to a full football match worth of time, to an hour and a half. So if you stuck with us this long, thank you very much. I'll try and make my quizzes a little bit quicker going forward, but I hope you enjoyed them. Keep an eye on Twitter. Like I said, we're going to barricade you with tweets and polls and clips of the show and stuff through the week now. And also keep an eye for the Twitter question for the next podcast and anything else we decide to check out there between now and then. So fingers crossed. 2 of us gone for a win, 1 gone for a draw. If it's anything like Newport, expect a heavy defeat. But let's hope our predictions are a bit more on point this week. Okay, from myself, Steve, and Gito, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.